Good afternoon. My name is Lynn van Rooyen. I'm from WCC Publications, and I am passionate about words and about writing. And I've got two very special guests with me today. And we're going to start with my colleague, Stephen. Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself and why are you sitting here today?
Well, my full name is Stephen Brown. I've been working with the Communications Department of the WCC for several years, and my role is to be the coordinator of the World Council of Churches Journal, and in particular, editor of the journal Ecumenical Review. Now, for me, these are really key publications. I did my studies at university in the modern ecumenical movement. I did a PhD that involved looking at World Council of Churches programs as a precursor of the peaceful revolution in East Germany. And for me, it's really important to have good, reliable, well-written articles and research that you can rely on as a researcher. And with these journals in the World Council of Churches, that's what we try to do. We try to use these journals and publish them for the ecumenical constituency, people in our member churches, but beyond that, people in educational institutions, in academic institutions. So really they're on what you could call the cutting face between church and the wider society. And that's something which I've always been passionate about, and I'm really pleased that in this role I can make that contribution.
So you say these journals. Tell us more about what journals?
Well, the World Council of Churches has got 3 journals. Each of them has a different colour: green, red, and blue, or turquoise. The green journal is Ecumenical Review, and that's been really closely linked with the history of the World Council of Churches. Its first issue was published in the week before the founding assembly took place in Amsterdam, but the history goes all the way back to the 1930s, when you had the ecumenical movements for life and work and faith and order that decided to make a World Council of Churches, and they said, we need to have an ecumenical journal that's an integral part of our life together in the WCC. The second journal we have actually has a much longer history. That's the International Review of Mission. That goes back, well, this year's a very special year because it's 110 years since the first issue was published. It was published 2 years after what many people think is the founding event of the ecumenical movement in the 20th century, the World Missionary Conference in Edinburgh. And those who were in Edinburgh said, we need to have something that keeps us in touch, keeps us in contact, helps us to reflect together on our work and our role as people in mission, understanding what each other do, but not just at what you might call the polite level of keeping in touch, but having articles that really help us to understand who each other are. And the youngest journal, well, I say youngest journal, goes back just over 40 years. That's called Current Dialogue. And that was founded by the World Council of Churches unit on dialogue with people of living faiths and ideologies. And it was one of the first, it may actually have been the first periodical that dealt with interfaith issues from a Christian organization. By that, I don't mean that all of the articles are Christian articles or written only by Christians, because one of the points is to bring people from different faiths in dialogue together, but had a really pioneering role. And with these 3 journals, the WCC looks to its past, builds on its past, but really looks to the future, because what we try to do with these journals is not just to have them as journals of ecumenical history, that is one of my interests, but also journals which pick up burning contemporary issues and look to the future with that. I mean, one example would be, we had a special issue of the Ecumenical Review in autumn 2020 on Christ's love in the world of a pandemic, and we were trying to put the theme of the World Council of Churches 11th Assembly, Christ's love moves the world to reconciliation and unity, in the context of the pandemic that people were wrestling with. And so we try to have this balance between looking to the past, picking up from the past, but looking to the future and saying, what are the burning issues and where do we need to think together, reflect together, and dialogue together?
Thank you, Stephen. Ricardo, I'm going to turn to you. Tell us who you are and where you come from.
My name is Riccardo Burigana. I am from Florence. I am professor of Ecumenism with a background in church history, professor at the Faculty of Theology of Florence. And at the same time, I am the director of Centro Studi per l'Ecumenismo in Italia. Is in Florence, thanks to Archbishop of Florence, Cardinal Giuseppe Bettori, who wanted to center was in Florence. And I am here for first time in General Assembly of the World Council of the Churches, and I spend my life to teach, study, and also to promote the information of ecumenical activity in Italy. The Centro Studi per l'Ecumenismo promoted many projects of historic and theological research, among them, among which there is one special project for the reduction of a bibliography on ecumenism. It was sent to the World Council of the Churches to share what we are doing for understanding how many books and publications are on ecumenism in the world. Of course, the Journal of the World Council of the Churches, especially the Ecumenical Review, is not just a journal for ecumenical students and scholars and professors, but is an extraordinary source for understanding how much important is the knowledge of the history of ecumenism, how much important is the understanding the state of a question, the open question of ecumenical dialogue, even in the perspective to get over. It's not just to reflect upon how many steps Christian did in the 20th centuries or in first decades of the 21st centuries. The last version of a bibliography on ecumenism has more than 2,300 titles of books, articles, chronicles, coming from everywhere in the world. When we saw that for the 70th anniversary of the foundation of the World Council of the Churches, and I would like to outline this date because it was so important, I guess, for ecumenical movement, also for the presence of Pope Francis in Geneva for his speech, and also for many articles published by the Ecumenical Review, some interviews, some text coming from the memories of the general secretaries of the World Council of the Churches. When you see that for this kind of anniversary, also a journal in Brazil, a journal of a University of a Catholic of Pernambuco, published a special issue of his journal, Parallelus, dedicated to this anniversary, trying to explain how much is important the idea to have a place where Christians have to meet and discuss and try to witness together the Christian values. That it means that there is a global production from theological level, also pastoral level, scholar and not scholar on ecumenism, which have to be shared. It's not more a time that we have a bibliography in English or in German or in French or bibliography on the history of ecumenism. It's time, and that is the idea which is at the beginning of a reduction of a bibliography on ecumenism, it's time to have a bibliography on what the Christian everywhere in the last year tried to do with publication, books and texts for promoting the idea that alone it's not more time to live the Christianity.
Thank you so much, Riccardo. So, Stephen, tell me, how do people access these?
Well, one way to access is to take out a subscription to the journal. And that's perfectly straightforward, but really the biggest change we've seen in the last 10 years is moving online. We now have all of the issues of ecumenical review since 1948, all of the issues of international review of missions since 1912, and all of the issues of current dialogue digitized and available online. This creates huge possibilities for research because it means students, researchers, but interested people can look by keyword, key phrase, pick up people's names and look to see where, in which articles these have appeared. And these are possibilities which in a print journal were never possible in quite the same way before. With the online availability, we've moved from having several hundred subscribers to several thousands of educational institutions now having access to the journal. And not just for paying subscriptions, there are programs for institutions in low and middle income countries that give them free or very reduced rate access to the journals. So we hope that in this way, we're also trying to make knowledge available globally in a way that maybe before was much more difficult.
We've got wonderful books on ecumenism. You've got these wonderful journals. What changes because of this material? What happens in the life of an individual or a congregation because they have this material?
Well, first of all, is the whole issue of accessibility. We have journals which are available, accessible to individuals or to congregations at a relatively inexpensive price. But more importantly than that is that we try to find the people who are working on the ideas and the actions for change. And we try to have a forum for them to express what they see as the burning issues. I mean, we used to have a phrase, or we still have a phrase in the ecumenical movement, the unity of the church and the unity of humankind. Now, these are big words, but really essentially what we believe is that our publications, but also our journals, help to create both the unity of the church so it can witness together in our societies, but also the unity of humankind. And sometimes promoting the unity of humankind means also doing quite fundamental research on what is it that divides us and why, because we need to know in order to make progress.
What else would you like people to know about the journals?
Well, I think that the online aspect of the journals is really one that we can develop. We've already got the possibilities for research through keywords or key phrases or year searches that you wouldn't have with print. But one of the really interesting statistics that we now have is that more than half of the downloads of our articles come through search engine searches. They don't come because somebody knows there's a journal called the Ecumenical Review or International Review of Mission or Current Dialogue. They're interested in a particular topic. For example, if they put into a search engine that they were looking for articles on global manifestations of racism today, they would probably find articles from our issue of January 2020. And this creates huge possibilities, but also huge challenges, because as editors, we like to look at each issue normally as a thematic issue where we have different voices being heard on the same issue. And sometimes we go to a lot of trouble to think, what order should they appear in our journal? But now with the search engines, people can find articles disconnected from that kind of context. That's a real challenge we have to think about. But then there are also possibilities not only for researchers of a certain age, but for example, working with younger theologians and researchers, they have the access to our articles, and we can help them to make what you might call in publishing terms a playlist by pulling out articles on a particular theme and creating their own issue of a journal with that. We've tried to do that a bit with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. We put together what we call a virtual issue, which drew on articles from Ecumenical Review and International Review of Mission dealing with health and healing, which helped to show how the ecumenical movement has been active in these issues for a long time, but also has a contribution to make to these issues, which is probably more relevant than ever with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for the wonderful work you do with the journals, and we hope they go from strength to strength.
And please, you have the opportunity to go to our website, look at the journals. You have opportunities to have sample issues or sample articles online, and take out a subscription.
Thank you.